Vanessa had her expression frozen after she heard the emperor declare that they'd kill Khan if she kept associating with him. At this moment, she could not grasp what reasons caused such a great reaction from the emperor himself. To her, Khan was only her friend and nothing more. Even though they treated each other as equals and shared stories of their lives, their relationship never went past that barrier. Soon, she mustered her courage and tried to stand up but still failed to raise her head and look her father in the eyes. "Why? Why are you going as far as saying that you'll kill him?" she asked with a heavy expression after gathering all her strength just to speak normally while bearing the brunt of this leaden aura of an 8th-stage saint. "Because your fate has already been decided after your birth. Any ties with others, especially a human, should not happen. As my daughter and the princess of the empire, you have a part to play. There's something only you can do and make our empire prosper in the future," he replied ambiguously. "And what is that? Why am I not aware of what meaning my life has? Have I not done enough already?" At this moment, Vanessa's voice suddenly turned sorrowful, as if welled-up emotions were surging and trying to get out. "Ever since childhood, I did everything to be worthy to get called as your daughter and became the rightful empress. I have already proved myself many times already. You know that compared to Hector and Rogies, only I have enough strength, talent, potential, and experience to become your successor. But you would not declare me as the crown princess even after all this time." She spoke in a scornful voice. What she said was indeed the fact. Her worth was proved a long time ago and by the rules of the imperial clan. She should have been declared as the crown princess a decade ago because she excelled in all the necessary qualities and checked all the boxes. Is it because I'm a half-human?" she asked with a hateful voice. Tremble. As soon as her words reached the emperor's ears, his resolve shook and his domain started shaking. The image of the burning throne hall started flickering and the fire subsided on its own as they returned to the previous environment of the throne hall, completely unharmed while looking exactly like it was when Vanessa entered. Javi closed his eyes, took a deep breath and replied in a thunderous voice, "Yes, it is because you're part human. Tainted blood can never sit on this throne." The emperor had an emotionless expression as he revealed the reason why Vanessa was denied what was her by birthright. Vanessa's eyes were wide open and soon, they were filled with fury as she tightly clenched his fists until blood seeped out of her nails. She dedicated her entire life since young to becoming qualified and finally hold enough influence as well as the power to become the empress in the future. "Do you know why I married your mother despite her being a human?" asked Javi in an uncaring tone. Vanessa's rage suddenly vanished and she looked at her father with a look of expectancy. It was one of the questions she had from decades. "It was a political marriage. Something I agreed upon in order to save and stabilize the empire when I became the emperor," he clarified. Although she had expected this answer, it still hurt to hear that her loving mother was nothing but a political alliance in eyes of her father. But the following second, Vanessa raised her voice as well and spoke. "Then what about her death? Since you care so much about your position and authority, why didn't you do anything about her death?" she asked in a sarcastic tone while hiding many of her other emotions. "What about it?" questioned Javi as he raised a brow. "I know that it was Hector and Rogi's familial fireborn clans who killed my mother by slowly poisoning her over years, and I also know that you are aware of the truth," she exclaimed. Shocked, the emperor was baffled and lost his calm composure. Because the truth behind his third wife's murder was only known to him, his advisors, and the 2 fireborn clan leaders. To the rest of the empire, she died because of a terminal illness. Yet, his daughter somehow managed to find one of the most well-guarded secrets of the empire. As for Vanessa, her father's expression confirmed her suspicions and verified the truth she heard from the secret helpers who suddenly appeared a year ago and helped her take down Rogies as well as establish her side for the race to become the crown princess. "You knew everything, and yet you did nothing." She spoke loudly and gave a look of disgust to her father. "You're a failure. As a husband, as a father, and as an emperor. You're a joke." Vanessa bellowed without any restraints. She didn't care if her words would offend the emperor and lead to capital punishment. Now that her entire life was already destined to not get what she worked hard for, she didn't bother hiding her true feelings anymore. "Mind your tongue, girl!" shouted the Emperor as he released his aura again. Boom! This time, Vanessa herself activated her bloodline and used it to stand firm against her sorry excuse of a father. Her nose and eyes bled as she used every bit of strength in her body just to withstand this pressure. Do not forget your place. You're nothing but a chess piece since you were brought into this world. Do you know why I have entertained your petty arguments till now? He spoke in a contemptuous voice. Because your life has only one purpose. To serve the Empire, he said in a grim tone. Vanessa's gaze turned even more hurt and vengeful at the same time. Although she was confronting her father with every inch of her being, she was far away from even scratching the surface of his immense strength. If her father willed it, he could kill her with just his saint pressure alone. Soon, heavy host Siegfried, the Emperor, and her father told Vanessa what part she had to play for the sake of the Empire and what fate awaited her. Like a predetermined and predestined life, her future was already decided, and there was nothing she could do to avoid it. This very second, Vanessa collapsed on the floor as her entire life was overthrown with a single sentence. All of her life's efforts, her tirelessly training to become the Empress, her will to survive, and the revenge she wanted to exact after learning the truth about her mother's death, all of it turned meaningless. As one would say, Vanessa's whole life turned out to be a complete lie. Now, nothing mattered to her, and Vanessa, in her mind, was having an existential crisis. All those feelings, all that pain and suffering that she had kept hidden inside her finally erupted, and her mind was bombarded with a plethora of emotions one after another. Why did I work so hard? Why was I even born? Living a life like this, I won't accept it, she shouted and quickly pulled out her sword from the scabbard. She grabbed the hilt and pointed the tip of the blade towards her. Stab! Vanessa quickly tried to stab her stomach with her own sword, the very sword her mother left behind and had been with her since childhood. Because at this moment, this princess of the Empire had completely broken down and wanted to end her life instead of suffering the misery that awaited her because of her position as the daughter of the Fireborn sitting on the throne. Shing! But before the tip of the blade could even pierce her armor and her belly, an intangible force suddenly stopped her from moving. Other than her head, her entire body was frozen, rather covered in a dense saint pressure that prohibited her from moving an inch. Vanessa looked at her father as streams of tears dropped from her eyes. This time, they were not only full of hatred but also unimaginable suffering and killing intent at the same time. Even wild monsters treat their children better than you. They raise them to get strong enough to survive on their own no matter the cost. You, on the other hand, you trade them for power and keep your so-called reign and this pretentious pride of the imperial family intact. Spoke Vanessa with a scornful gaze and spat on the ground. Because just minutes ago, she heard what her father said and realized how her entire existence had only one purpose that she did not even get to decide for herself from the very day she was born. Vanessa recalled the Emperor's words that destroyed her life's meaning in mere seconds. You were born only to get married to the hero of fire. After Vanessa cried her heart out while cursing her father, the Emperor, she eventually exhausted herself, and because of the immense psychological blow she received, it became hard for her to maintain consciousness, and thus, Vanessa ended up fainting. But despite all of her curses and bad-mouthing, Javi's temperament was also so strong that he did not give to her profanities or made a wrong move. Before Vanessa fainted, her willpower was drained to the bottom, and Javi placed a seal on her body just by raising his palm. Vanessa had studied about this seal while she was educating herself about warfare. This seal placed a restriction on the target's body, prohibiting them from taking their own lives or physically harming themselves to the point of no return. In the Vulcan Empire, this seal was often used on prisoners of high value or spies from the other empires during investigations. But only a 5th-stage saint or above could use this because leaving an imprint on someone's soul needed a lot of word energy and precise handling. But still, it was a very effective method to get useful intel from enemies of the Empire. And now, she, the princess herself, was treated like one. After Vanessa fainted, Their image flickered, and the next moment, she was lying on her bed, while a wave of burgundy-colored aura encapsulated her body. "Heal well," and spoke Javi before and left only 2 words behind before he disappeared into thin air. "I'm sorry." A few minutes later, the Emperor arrived on a secretly guarded floor that was under the protection of 2 Imperial guards. "Your Majesty," said the guards loudly, and instantly kneeled. "Leave the chamber and let no one inside till I'm done," said the Emperor, and entered through the door without sparing a glance at the guards. Both the guards quickly disappeared from the room while leaving the aura of first-stage saints themselves. As soon as the door closed, Javi ordered his armor to disappear, and the following second, he was wearing tight black clothes. Soon, hundreds of archaic runes and magic formations appeared, and layers after layers covered the entire hall. In truth, this was the last protection hall of the Imperial family in case there was a coup or someone tried to kill them. A hall made by the best dwarven blacksmiths hundreds of years ago that could even withstand an attack from a 9th-stage saint. This was the last resort to protect the Imperial family members, and only the reigning emperor or empress had the right to open or close this hall. However, the expression on his face went from calm to that of an enraged man real quick. "Even now, I'm still failing to keep my promise," he spoke to himself as his voice reverberated in this quiet hall. "Howl! Howl!" Strong winds suddenly appeared from his body and howled in the surrounding atmosphere. Boom! The very next moment, Javi released all of his saint pressure to the full extent, and even the small dust particles in the air completely froze. If he had revealed this aura before, forget being unable to move. Vanessa would have been reduced to small atoms, as this pressure was thousands of times higher and stronger than what she experienced in the throne hall. But unlike his domineering aura, a teardrop suddenly dropped from his left cheek, and the cruel and emotionless emperor, who didn't even bother comforting his crying daughter, was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a face of a lost and helpless man came into sight. Boom! Boom! Like an active volcano, one after another, massive explosions and bursts of saint pressure filled this vast hall. Hundreds of defensive barriers, runes and magic formations that were placed to protect this place activated all at once and tried to subdue this insurmountable and unbearable saint pressure. If Rathnar was present here, he would be able to quantify how destructive this saint pressure was, because he too had been on this level of strength once. Even someone like Khan could guess that this terrifying aura was enough to destroy over 500 kilometers of area and incinerate everything in that radius. The temperature of the room itself was no less than that of sizzling molten lava, and even with the magma drake's abilities, Khan would be turned into ash in just a couple of seconds. "Ayurgurg!" screamed Javi as if he was suffering from excruciating pain. His screams consistently created shockwaves and sent ripples that barged against the runes and protection barriers inside the hall. This walking-talking nuclear warhead called Javi host Siegfried was letting out all of the anger and bloodlust he had held inside of him. This rage and killing intent wasn't directed at anyone else but himself. What's the point of being the emperor if I have to sell my daughter just to maintain peace? He asked himself as both of his eyes let out more tears of regret. But they instantly evaporated because of the temperature of the room. "Father, brother, I wish you two were here. I don't know how long can I carry this on," said Javi as he curled down and started bawling in sorrow. No one would be able to believe that the strongest person of the entire Vulcan Empire, the emperor who ruled over billions with an iron will, was now crying like a helpless child. This was a face completely opposite of the cruel, merciless, and indifferent emperor that everyone, including his own children, had never seen. Javi pulled back his saint pressure, and in just a minute, the room returned to its original temperature as the runes and formations splendidly did their job. Javi summoned a photo frame from his space as his tears appeared again and started rolling down like a river. He sniffed and wiped off his tears, a futile attempt that didn't stop his grief in any way. As he stared at the image in the frame, his countenance turned unsightly because another wave of regret and sense of loss hit the emperor. The most prestigious and powerful person in this empire now looked like a beggar cursing the world for his fate. His crimson and floating hair that were ablaze like a violent fire dimmed and stopped moving. Javi then looked at the person inside the photo frame. A human woman in her mid-30s. Long black hair and a refreshing expression on her face. Her eyes had green iris and her overall appearance gave a feeling of kindness and compassion. The resemblance between this woman and Vanessa was uncanny. Even Javi looked at her photo with a sense of unending yearning as he spoke in a defeated voice. "I have failed our daughter again, Freya," as the Emperor cried while weeping tears of helplessness. The atmosphere of the room was filled with pain and suffering. At this moment, when no one was watching him letting his sorrow out, Javi reminisced about the happenings of 38 years ago. His father was the only child of the former empress who married a worthy Fireborn warrior even though he didn't belong to any of the 6 Fireborn clans. And his father also followed the same tradition because no matter how loyal these clans were, in the end, they just needed an opportunity or an excuse to usurp the reigning emperor or an empress if they were not strong enough or didn't possess a scheming mind. But one day, his father, who was a 7th stage saint himself, passed away out of the blue because of some sickness no one was aware of. After that, Javi's elder brother Vili, who was also the crown prince at that time, took command and became the new emperor. He was someone with great qualities of a ruler. But as if the calamities had no end, his elder brother died in a skirmish against the Zivit Empire, one that served God of Life and was ruled by the elven race. Back then, Javi was only 24 years old, a young lad who had no interest in politics or becoming an emperor. He aspired to become the #1 spearman in the empire and had been relentlessly training and roaming through the empire to improve his skills while hiding his real identity. But after he heard of his brother and father's death, he had to return as the burden of the throne befell on his shoulders. Freebnovel.cm. And at that time, everyone including the loyal Fireborn clans, his relatives who were in the line of succession after him and some of the loyal aides of his father, all of them coveted the throne. Because in their eyes, Javi lacked every single quality and was nothing but a useless and undeserving heir to handle such a great position and reign the empire. All of which was indeed true. He was but an inexperienced and helpless young man who had different priorities and very few people he could trust. Back then, the only people he knew well were some people who had great talent but were nothing compared to top powers and influential figures, Throck Oakenshield being one of them. Thus, after he rightfully ascended the throne, there were many people who had qualms about him becoming the emperor and tried to create problems one way or another. And finally, Javi was forced to make a hard decision. Before things escalated, he made a proposition to the 6 Fireborn clans who held most of the power after the Imperial clan, that he would marry the heiresses of the 2 of the strongest Fireborn clans. This, in a way, opened a new door for them at the same time. Because even if these Fireborn clans served the throne, none of them were allied or saw an eye to eye. For them, their benefits came before others, and even joining hands with other clans would eventually end up as a loss. All of the leaders of the clans were aware that if their forces started a coup, not only would the other Fireborn clans use that as an excuse to oppress them, and if things came to the worst situation, their entire clan of 100 million people would be eradicated to set an example. Everyone was a villain, but they liked to portray themselves as righteous hero. Also, there would be too much bloodshed with no guarantee of success and gaining control over the empire either. The losses were not worth the hefty price. But in this proposition by Javi, they at least had a chance to get their clan's heirs to compete for the throne with a full claim that couldn't be opposed in any aspect. Thus, Javi married the 2 heiresses of the 2 of the strongest Fireborn clans to stop their advances and avoid a calamity. A sacrifice he made to keep his family and its prestige intact. To the Fireborn clans, Javi was someone who could be oppressed easily in the future since he was only a 1st stage saint despite being the emperor. Thus, helping him solidify his rule also worked to their benefit. And with their support, the emperor managed to subjugate any potential rise of traitors and uprisings planned by those who wanted to benefit in times of crisis. But while doing so, the Elven Empire saw that the Vulcan Empire was currently unstable and started a full-scale invasion. And the Vulcan Empire with a shaky structure was having a hard time since not all the forces were unified, and still, some people would rather let enemies create chaos in their empire and use it to dethrone Javi than save their motherland. For power-hungry people, There were no morals or sense of responsibility towards their motherland. Thus, Havi had to rely on one of the neighboring empires that had signed a treaty to help each other in times of need when his grandmother was the empress of the empire. But even so, they tried to back down from their previous agreement. So as a form of reassurance to hold an oath of support, the emperor married their princess, who was the second child of their emperor, and her brother was the crown prince. In a way, this was a purely political alliance that would benefit the future of both empires. This was already a very good deal in every way for them. Thus, with another empire's military help and unified manpower, Havi managed to save the empire, stabilize it, and soon he succeeded in bringing peace and order. Using those times, he established himself firmly over the years, and while everyone was looking down on him for being weak and always relying on others for help, he started his real plan: to raise his strength quietly and become so strong that no one would ever dare look down on him or try to oppress him in any way. The once naive prince was gone, and this experience reformed him completely to make Havi understand the truth of being an emperor. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Havi kept thinking about what happened in the past, which led to his current predicament and made his own daughter hate him, while he couldn't even control her in any way and had to force her to a fate she would rather die than living it. In his youth, he learned the real price one had to pay to hold such a big position as emperor. The throne had too many knives and thorns, and whoever sat on it must possess enough strength to endure and overcome these obstacles. After bringing peace and order to the Vulcan Empire, with his resolution, he started advancing through saint ranks using his bloodline and hard effort while being surrounded by enemies in every direction. In the meantime, he had fathered 2 children with the 2 empresses as a formality because that would shut up and control the fireborn clans. The other 2, they had to unwillingly marry him just like he did. There was no love or sense of attachment, even if they had to appear as his partners in front of the whole empire. As for his third wife, while he was suffering alone and bearing the burden of keeping the empire safe and the imperial clan intact, his human wife stayed by his side. While he was bearing the burden of responsibilities of billions of lives on his shoulder, Freya comforted him, consoled him, and unlike the others, she saw the real him. She became the friend he needed the most when he was at his lowest. As years passed, pure love bloomed between the 2, and soon, their bond deepened from a political marriage to that of a real husband and wife. Havi could still vividly remember the day Vanessa was born. It was the happiest moment of his life. But Vanessa's birth also indicated a great obstacle for the fireborn clans at the same time, because rightfully, she too had a claim to the throne. Soon, they planted their spies among Freya's loyal servants and started poisoning her food, and even the water she drank in extremely small dosages, so that it couldn't be tracked. And after 8 years, Phrygia started falling ill because of the consumption of this untraceable poison, and her body had lost its ability to function. Their assassination plan was so perfect that even the experts failed to detect the real cause and called it a terminal illness. Some even said that because Empress Freya was a normal human with no ability to use world energy and magic. Thus, giving birth to Vanessa, who possessed the imperial fireborn bloodline, took a toll on her and hollowed her body from the inside. And in just a couple of months, Havi saw the love of his life die as he could only watch from the side helplessly in her final moments. Only a couple of years later, the emperor found out the truth via the Church of Hetrax about how the 2 fireborn clans meticulously planned Freya's death. He almost went berserk and wanted to wipe out the 2 fireborn clans for this treachery. But his 4 advisors stopped him, telling him to think about the consequences and chaos it would bring if he were to exact his revenge. Their subordinacy also came under an oath that was agreed upon since ancient times, that the 6 clans should never harm the imperial blood, and the reigning emperor or empress should never punish them for unjustifiable reasons. And technically, Freya wasn't the imperial blood, and nor did have solid evidence that it was the 2 clans who planned her death. Also, the other fireborn clans would definitely retaliate, knowing that the emperor could come for them next. Because these clans had more than 800 million people themselves, Havi was forced to control his rage so he could avoid war and not let innocent people get dragged into it and die and keep the empire running. These 6 clans were also the 6 pillars of the empire at the same time. On the other side, the Church of Hetrax was already full of foxes. They'd disassociate themselves from any war or an uprising since they only cared about maintaining their institute regardless of who ruled the empire as part of the ancient pact. Havi, who was only a third-stage saint at that time, felt like he didn't hold enough strength even if he was the emperor. He couldn't kill the people who killed the love of his life because he needed them to keep the legacy of his family intact and had to avoid a war that would cause bloodshed so big that it would break the entire empire's foundation itself. And the only way he could come close to exacting his revenge was to silently become strong until he became an absolutely terrifying force that could make everyone pay while scaring others to the point when no one would even think about retaliating. And to make everyone not have any suspicions about him trying to exact his revenge and pose a threat to them, Havi appeared as a cold and uncaring person as if he never loved Freya. It was then Havi made an imperial decree and placed those restrictions on the human race. All that just to unify the empire by giving them a common point to hate. He had to become a cold-blooded tyrant, and his decree made thousands of humans suffer a cruel fate while being ostracized and treated like animals in the Vulcan Empire for the past 3 decades. To bide for time and reach his goals, he condemned an entire race to damnation even if it meant going against everything he stood for as a ruler. Soon, he cut off his ties with Vanessa to make everyone think that he didn't care for her at all. To the 6 clans, it became evident that Havi was never going to make Vanessa his successor either. This was the only way he could use so they'd not see her as a threat to their plans and target her like Freya for the time being. "Freyja, my love, I've failed you, and I have destroyed our daughter's life," spoke Havi as he wallowed, his appearance looking as miserable as it could be. Because while Vanessa was enduring and struggling, giving her best effort to become the Empress, there was only one way Havi could protect Vanessa's life and ensure her safe future. Thus he made a deal with the Pope. Havi finally reached the end of the story he was reminiscing by himself. To ensure his daughter's safety and avoid a civil war, he had turned into a villain in her eyes while becoming a cold and ruthless ruler to the human race of the empire. But every step he took was done out of absolute necessity and give him enough time to cement his rule for the sake of his family and his children, because although Vanessa was a half-human, she had more of his pure bloodline as it was the dominant part of her body. But the small portion from her mother's side gave her the appearance of a real human and nothing that of a half-breed or a hybrid between 2 different species. But due to that phenomenon, the Fireborn bloodline grew stronger and denser as Vanessa grew. At this point, Havi was aware that Vanessa had the potential to even surpass him if she ever became an 8th-stage saint in the future. Her being half-human was a curse to her claim to the throne, but it was also the biggest blessing in her journey to strength. Yet, Vanessa's fate, even if she became the Empress, was limited. The bigger threat she became, the more risk of her getting killed rose before she became strong enough to defend herself. Although she had proved her worth till this point, Vanessa hadn't really seen what horrors awaited even if she became the ruler one day. Because sooner or later, she would have to marry one of the heirs of the Fireborn clans to carry the imperial bloodline even if she became the Empress. Marrying some prince of the other empires for the Empress was already prohibited if she held that position. And the one to marry her would naturally have their clan control the fate of the empire unofficially. The price was too great to pay, something that broke even once a righteous and straightforward man like him to become a ruthless leader who even condemned the entire human race just to keep order and his authority intact even if he didn't inherently hate humans. And finally, there was only one way he could protect her from the same fate as her mother. The only way to completely subjugate and restrict the 6 Fireborn clans while keeping the Imperial clan as the ruling power even if he went against their leaders to take his revenge. And that was unifying the Imperial clan and the Church of Hetrax. Because if these 2 forces joined hands, even the 6 pillars of the Empire couldn't do anything. Even the smallest kind of retaliation would be treated as treason and Havi could use it as an excuse to punish them. If his clan and the Church worked together, the 2 Fireborn clans couldn't do any significant damage to the Empire and naturally, the other 4 clans would also change their stand to not get eradicated in the process. Thus, Havi had made an agreement with the Pope, Demiurge's Val Arlam, that since the chosen hero they were going to summon after 2 decades would be a human by default like in the past, and if it was a man, then they'd arrange the marriage between that hero and Vanessa. This deal was made when Vanessa was only 10 years old. Javi had already made his moves more than 20 years ago. This way, she won't get dragged into their political warfare, and also help solidify the imperial clan's rule. With Church fully backing them while him leading the imperial clan and gaining strength in the years to come, Javi would get everything he want while also securing the future of the empire without causing millions of innocent deaths. As for Vanessa herself, she would be safe and will have time to grow in the future. To him, he was ready to accept her hatred and would suffer her anger for the rest of his life as long as he could protect his daughter, even if it meant becoming the villain in her eyes. Because little did anyone know that strength wasn't always the solution to overcome all of the problems in the world. Sometimes, one had to even sacrifice themselves for the greater good and maintain peace. To Javi, this was the bitter truth that he had come to learn the hard way. To everyone, the emperor was the strongest person in the whole empire. Yet in reality, he was the most helpless. Bound by his duties and his heritage, paying the price of being the emperor at the cost of his sanity and his integrity. While his daughter hated him, his sons only coveted his position. He was sacrificing his soul. Despite standing on the summit of the mountain, he was lonely at the top. Meanwhile, there was one particular who was unaware of how many problems his involvement with Vanessa had caused as he was fully engrossed with his artificing training. Just 2 days ago, Khan stopped other doppelgangers and put a pause on his weapons training, combat techniques training with different kinds of weapons. On the side, the doppelgangers also stopped studying magic and space law. And all of the 15 copies of himself along with the original him, they kept practicing and increasing his efficiency in the study of rune and magic formations. Just like how calligraphy needed years of experience and perfect control over one's body, particularly the movement of their hands, runes and engravings also demanded profound control and understanding of this craft. But after the gifts from Brocker and Eitri along with his hacks called the doppelgangers, Khan's mastery rose 15 times than it normally should have in the past 1 month alone. He managed to raise most of the skills and his knowledge as well as experience in runes and magic formations to SS rank in such a short time. And finally, just when the blacksmithing duel was only 1 week away, he heard a notification in his mind. Congratulations to the host for becoming a semi-saint artificer. Khan now stood in Throck's secret forge where the old dwarf worked on extremely important commissions of weapons and armors. So far, only Khan and his subordinates were aware of this place. Khan even spent some time here during his initial training period, but later, he and Blackwell were ordered to work in the production line to actually increase their crafting speed and efficiency while improving their skills since mass production of goods demanded skilled craftsmanship. And just 5 days after he became a semi-saint artificer by training 16 times harder and faster for the past 1 month to meet enough requirements, the Saint Blacksmith summoned all of them together here for the second time. Khan and the crew looked around the forge. After Khan was done with completely absorbing the remaining darkness attribute and elemental aura in the body, he gave the remaining half of the body as well. But now, there wasn't a single trace left of the ginormous dragon that was guarding the final barrier in Verlassen fiefdom when Khan and the group went there to acquire the Tablet of Arcana. As I promised, they're all done, said Throck as he played with his grizzly white and unkempt beard and had a prideful as well as a content smirk on his face. Swoosh! A white light suddenly flashed out of nowhere and quickly in front of Khan and the 6 generals. A set of armor and weapons for all of them appeared respectively. Only Omega was the one left out here. And the aura, even Khan and Blackwell, who were now knowledgeable and on par with the majority of famous blacksmiths of the Empire, were simply too stunned. Other subordinates didn't understand how incredibly fantastic and top-notch quality work this was, but both of them just couldn't help admiring these with a look of worshipping. Every single one of these armor sets was made with the dragon's body parts, and all the weapons were forged using the dragon's horns, which was the sturdiest and hardest part to process while forging. Even when Khan and Blackwell were frozen due to their enlightenment, Throck hadn't stopped forging these even for a day, and just like their agreement, he was finally done after 1.5 years. Khan first looked at the newly upgraded Dracos armor. This Dracos armor that was made by Albestros Winston using the Magma Drake's body was no longer black and red in color but rather black with violet outlines. Khan understood this new appearance came to be because of the guardian dragon whose body they used for reforging had only black and violet scales, claws and horns. Previously, the armor was sturdy yet bulky, like that of a tank or a knight. But after Throck reforged it while keeping the base and mixing it with the higher quality materials of the lesser dragon's body, the result was completely out of Khan's expectations, because now, it was lightweight, compact, and had no excessive design flaws in any part of the armor. Forget a warrior. It looked more like armor made for an assassin from the overall look with even a hood made of dragon's hide. But at the same time, Khan could feel that it was sturdier and the defense was 3 times higher compared to the time after Dracos armor was upgraded to legendary rank after Khan himself became a saint. Khan used Mimir's eyes and Prometheus' forethought, 2 of the gifts given by the blacksmithing deities aka Brocker and Eitri, and after he and Blackwell inspected and hidden runes that were intrinsically carved and perfectly hidden under the layers of furnishings, both of them were left speechless again. This was a major upgrade instead of just adding some extra look and designs because these runes were the top-grade Dwarven and Elven runes mixed to form the perfect balance. Both of them were now semi-saint artificers, so they couldn't instantly tell how greatly these archaic runes would enhance and buff these armors during a battle. Listen, brats. I wanted to use the dragon's hide for your normal clothes too, but your normal attires are made from the Invimarak skin. Among all the legendary monsters, only the Invimarak doesn't have any specific element attached to its body. So these are still the best for defense and agility when you lot are going about your normal lives, he said in a thoughtful tone. Blackwell nodded in response, but it was indeed the fact. But whenever any of you equip these armors, the dragon's aura will naturally leak and it will be noticeable. Although I made it so that no one other than you guys can use them, it's better to avoid the greedy eyes of the people. Anything made of a dragon's body is considered a treasure trove even for the Imperial clan. So I'd advise you to use them only when you're in a pinch and not for just any casual fights you are confident in winning, he explained. All of them understood his worries because even they could feel the suppressing aura filled with regality oozing out of the armors and their respective weapons. And I'm sure this won't be the end effect, thought Khan. He was certain that system would give him good news after scanning the armor and the Draconian bloodline effect kicked in. Even with only 5% Draconian bloodline purity, Dracos armor was already better than many epic rank armors. And now that Khan possessed 35% purity, once the bloodline effect was applied during a fight, his battle prowess was going to rise by a lot. Hell, he felt like even fighting a 3rd stage saint while using the new Dracos armor would be enough to even the playing field. And that too without using the Azura mode or Berserk God mode. This was much more than what they had initially expected. So overall, what Throck made for Khan is already the best of the best with the type of materials he gave him to reforge their armor sets that Albestros previously made for them in the Rakos Empire. Every single one of them was now at the legendary rank thanks to his master's skills. While everyone rejoiced, there was one member of the crew who hadn't received anything. As for you, lad, Throck spoke and then looked at Omega with a grin. I have made something very special. Throck glanced at Omega, the only one among Khan's subordinates who didn't get an armor made for himself from the guardian dragon's body. And the main reason being Omega himself asked the old blacksmith to not make him one. Throck, however, gave him a new set of gears such as gauntlets, pants, waistband and straps for his hands that he normally wore. This was actually the spare set Albestros built for him back in Verlassen, and now Throck improved its quality to legendary as well. As for why Omega didn't want a new armor made for him, because the Moonlight Armor Va Twilight Armor that he acquired after gaining the Fenrir bloodline from Skoll and Hattie along with the remnant they both imparted to Omega, there was no need for him to rely on any other armors even if they were made by using a legitimate dragon. The Moonlight Armor gave Omega a 4 times boost in speed and 2 times in precision/accuracy while equipped. The Twilight Armor on the other side greatly enhanced his total damage output and firepower by 3 times while increasing his defense by 2 times. In other words, these 2 armors were basically tailor-made armors for him, and they will keep improving their strengths and usefulness as Omega's rank rose along with his Fenrir bloodline purity. Hence, using draconian armor would greatly hinder his fighting capacity instead. But this wasn't the end. Throck handed him the reforged Raijin, the first katana he had that was also made by Albestro's back when they all lived in capital Rathna. This katana specialized in lightning and wind elemental attacks, and after Albestro's made improvements upon it using the Invimarak Tusk, it was already the best of best I'm epic rank weapons category. Invimarak Tusk is still the best option that could conduct and help you use lightning and wind elemental attacks efficiently without holding you back. So I didn't reforge Raijin completely and only added some runes to elevate its rank to legendary rank. Spoke Throck. Yet for some reason, Throck still had that coy smirk as he snickered. Whoosh! And the next moment, he summoned a weapon, and everyone else present in this massive 3-kilometer-wide forge was agape in shock. A pitch-black katana that leaked an oppressive aura, while the edges on its blade let out a glowing red light came to be. This was also a legendary rank weapon, but completely made out of the dragon's horn. This blade is my own version of a katana. That human blacksmith made you Raijin while not even being a saint blacksmith, so there's no way I would take credit for his work just because I made some improvements. This one, however, is created using the dragon's heart, he said. To this statement, even Khan stood stupefied on the spot, because he had already absorbed the dragon's core which resided in its heart. But the rest of it had no use. What kind of effect does it give? Asked Omega with excitement on his face. You're a magic swordsman, right? Try infusing fire element in it, said Throck with a grin. Omega nodded and grabbed the katana, which had a similar design as Raijin but looked completely different. One was a glimmering white blade like the moon at night, while the other was a black blade with the red glow of a volcano. Sizzle! Sizzle! Sizzling noises filled the grand forge halls as this new katana quickly released scalding heat, and soon, the temperature of the room instantly rose by 50 degrees. If a normal human was present in this room, they wouldn't be able to stand this heat at all, but since all of them were saints, everyone was left unaffected. Do you feel it? Asked Throck. Omega nodded and spoke with a tone filled with gratitude. Thank you, Master Oakenshield. I shall forever cherish this weapon. Omega bowed in respect but didn't tell others what kind of effects this new weapon had, as if this type of information should be revealed only in a serious battle. Master, a name. He looked at Khan, who stood at the end of the line. The last time Albestros made his first katana, Omega had asked Khan to name it, and now it was called Raijin. Thus, this new katana also deserved a name of its own. Khan walked forth and looked at the katana, the coiling veins over the glowing red edge, the pitch-black body with a sturdy yet extremely well-balanced blade. Full of unending and inexhaustible scorching fire, spoke Khan with a thoughtful expression as he ransacked his mind for a fitting name. Then, he went through his knowledge of a specific country's cultural lore and mythologies as he tried to remember a fitting name, the same as he did when he named Raijin. From now on, this new katana should be called, spoke Khan as his voice reverberated in the entire forge. Kojin. Omega kept glancing at his new katana and started testing out its balance by making attacking moves in a corner. With this new weapon, Omega finally had 2 legendary rank katanas for himself. He had a dual swords samurai legendary class now. Although he had 4 katanas before, only Raijin was noteworthy while the rest were just normal epic rank ones. But with Raijin and Kojin in his hand, he would be able to invoke his DSS class-specific effect that increased his total attack stats by twice and dexterity by 1.5 times. Finally, Omega was a proper dual sword samurai. I did my best. Since I had the second horn you gave me instead of using the claws and the skin for the weapons, now all the dragon's claws and hide have been used since for armors and robes. Spoke Throck as he felt a great weight lifted off from his chest. But Throck then smiled again as if he wasn't done with showing off his great craftsmanship skills. Now, let me show you why I am called one of the top 5 saint blacksmiths. Throck then took out something and displayed it in front of everyone. At this very moment, a loud voice rang in Khan's head. Rudra, the basilisk subordinate, loudly shouted as soon as he saw what Throck revealed. Human, I want this weapon. Khan and everyone were stunned and dumbstruck as soon as Thrak took out another weapon, which even riled up Rudra, who preferred to stay quiet all the time. Because at this moment, all of them felt an insurmountable and familiar aura filled with killing intent towards all of them. This was something all of them remembered vividly because they faced and barely managed to escape alive from the owner of this grim and terrifying aura. If not for Khan being a special case and a chosen hero, none of them would have managed to live till this point. Because right now, the aura exuding from this new weapon that instantly put them on edge belonged to the Guardian Dragon. To everyone's reaction, Thrak kept smirking as if he was expecting the scene in front of him. One of the reasons why he chose to reveal this weapon at the very end. Unlike the other weapons, this one took the most effort. I concentrated and infused the blood that I managed to extract from the dragon's heart in this weapon. It contains a trace of its bloodline and some remnant will of the dragon when it was alive, since it was a mythical rank dragon who lived for more than 300 years. Hence it is more overbearing compared to the others. Explained Thrak with a prideful expression on his face. Khan and Blackwell were speechless and dumbfounded again. Because by now, they already had an idea about how hard it was to directly infuse a bloodline inside a weapon. Not only was this technique extremely hard, there was only 1 in 100 chance for success. Plus, concentrating a bloodline of a mythical rank monster was a complicated method. Because the amount of blood needed was too much, and also filtering the purest part of the blood with the highest density was very difficult. Even a saint blacksmith without decades of experience in this forging technique would definitely fail, much less noobs like them. Another sense of respect emerged in their hearts towards their master. Although Thrak had a short temper most of the time and did things out of rage, he had more than enough skills to back up his prideful manners. However, because of this, both dragon horns are used since you asked me to use them to make weapons for these guys. As for you, I could only reforge your sword and make some extra weapons that you asked me to, he said to Khan while still gloating. The look on his face screamed, "Praise me more, you plebeians" type of feeling as he spoke in enthusiasm. Khan nodded since he understood how hard it was to process the horn of a dragon. A lot of it would eventually get wasted in sweltering and processing like any other metal while forging a weapon. It wasn't some metal that could be liquefied and reused again and again for forging. And since the guardian dragon himself was 1 kilometer tall even when he normally sat on the 2 forelegs and hind legs, many parts of its body were too big. But even with that much quantity, just the fact that Thrak managed to make out all of their weapons, armors, and reinforce them by forming layers of the same material again and again, then create this long weapon that carried the guardian dragon's bloodline, and the remnant will was already a feat worthy of a standing ovation. Their master was simply flexing on them, and they could only be awed. Brat, that it is indeed one of the best weapons I have seen. Even my sword made with the elder dragon's horn wasn't able to carry the bloodline and its remnant will. This is a matter of skill and experience. This Thrak Oakenshield is indeed worthy of his title as one of the top 5 blacksmiths of the Empire, said Rathnar, the Peak Saint. Even many heroes that I fought didn't have this quality of gear. Even their legendary rank armors would pale in front of the ones placed in front of you. He praised the work wholeheartedly. To Khan it was obvious already, because not everyone could kill a dragon, and even Emer Whitlock, Rathnar's descendant from 200 years ago, who was an 8th stage saint magician, could only secretly enter the Dragon Empire and only subdue a mythical rank lesser dragon that was only past level 300. Fighting a superior or royal dragon would have caused a great commotion. Plus, he didn't need that high-rank dragon to use for the formation he set up in order to protect the Tablet of Arcana in Verlassen. While Khan dwelled and accepted the fact about how lucky they were, Rudra spoke in his mind again. Human, you guys can have everything else. But that weapon only belongs to me, he said like an impatient child who desperately wanted a toy. Because it can use the dragon bloodline better? Is that why you want it? Asked Khan in return. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ignorant as always, admonished the basilisk subordinate. This is why I can't help but look down on you idiots. None of you know how to make use of your bloodlines properly even now. Rudra berated Khan and everyone else through their inner mind connection. All right, you legless and wingless lizard, enlighten us. said Cyril in a retorting voice as he took that statement personally. Humph. At best. You lot can harness the bloodline in a battle with great effort. But since none of you possess the draconian bloodline like me and the human, you will never be able to utilize it properly. Scoffed off Rudra and continued, but since this idiot human of ours doesn't know anything about bloodlines even now, it's given that this weapon should go to me. He iterated. What kind of logic is this? I have more draconian bloodline purity than you. Rebuked Khan. You don't understand. Although this weapon is created using the dragon's blood and its horn, I can sense that it has the capacity to do more. As for why it should be me who uses this weapon, it should be pretty obvious. He said in a prideful voice and continued in an overbearing tone. Because not only can I use the dragon bloodlines better than any of you, he stated and declared the reason why he should be wielding this weapon. But I can also infuse my basilisk bloodline. As soon as Rudra declared what he could do with the new weapon that Thrak displayed in front of them, everyone including Khan gasped in shock. Because by that logic, this weapon was not only extremely powerful already, but Rudra could even make it stronger by mixing the basilisk bloodline. Who were the basilisks? In ancient history, out of all the god beasts, only the basilisks were strong enough to stand toe-to-toe against the dragon race. Many records even said that there was a time when both species nearly went extinct because of each other. Although Rudra had a 50% basilisk bloodline, even he wasn't a true basilisk but only a variant that Khan created using the synthesis divine ability. Yet, he had the advantage of being able to absorb and purify both these bloodlines. An oddity that never existed before. On top of it, if he could use this weapon with dragon's bloodline and add basilisks on top of it, it's like the exam was of 100 marks. But Rudra would be able to score 150 marks instead, breaking all the rules of the examination system. But you're not even in a human form yet, even though you're done absorbing the Jatvorim's mythical rank metamorphosis bloodline. Spoke Khan. Because for some reason, Rudra still hadn't managed to gain a human form even after he was done with completely eating and absorbing the Jatvorim's body in the past year. To his words, the variant replied in an indignant tone. I need a strong bloodline to incorporate basilisk and dragon bloodline together. Your human bloodline is simply too weak to help me take a humanoid form that can sustain and balance both of them at once. I need a better specimen or a body to absorb, said the bloodline expert of their crew, shifting all the blame on Khan instead for not being able to take a human form. He is correct, boy. There have been hybrids of both bloodlines in the past. But in both cases, a strong bloodline capable of bearing the pressure of these two species was needed. A lion may be able to breed with a tiger, but it's not the same case with a rabbit, said Rathnar. Fine. I don't know how to fight using this weapon either. I will keep it reserved for you, said Khan. All of this conversation took only 10 seconds in real time of the world since all of them were saints and above while possessing minds that were dozens of times faster and stronger than normal people. Give it a name, said Thrak. Khan then walked close and grabbed this weapon. This is a weapon worthy of a king. Give it a fitting name, human. Rudra chimed in again. Khan gave it a thought as he looked at the long weapon in hand. 3 black and sharp-edged prongs, the one in the middle being the longest. All 3 ends had pointed ends that could easily stab and tear apart anything, whether it was an armor, a weapon, or a living being. And the design of these prongs was robust yet elegant at the same time. Just a single swing and it would be able to overpower an enemy with its momentum alone. The black and violet color combination gave it a sense of mysteriousness and also represented destruction just at the first glance. The weapon Khan held in his hand was a trident, a weapon fitting for a king that represents regality, dominance, and destruction. I guess I do know a perfect name for it, said Khan as he looked at the majestic trident that exuded the aura of the guardian dragon. Atlan. Khan let out a sigh and inwardly, he was extremely elated, because all the trouble he went through to make the deal with Thrak nearly a year and a half ago finally bore fruit, a very juicy and rewarding one at that. None of them even tried these weapons and armors, but they were already certain how amazing they would fare in a life and death battle. All the time they invested in helping Throck to get out of his predicament because of the second prince, then help Oakenshield Company get the support of the first prince as well as the third princess, having a confrontation against the Heroes Party which led to the church also getting involved. Lastly, Khan accepting this blacksmithing challenge between Oakenshield and Torek in the Dwarven Council. All of it had greatly benefited him. Although he was not even worth mentioning in the same line as his master, Khan knew that he indeed had the solid foundation of a great blacksmith. Just that needed more time, experimentation with different types of weapons and perfecting these different skills taught by Throck. He wasn't an ignorant idiot who would think that he was already the best blacksmith in the world because of his sudden rise in the blacksmithing and artificing profession. He had the advantage of being taught by one of the best blacksmiths of the Empire, and the weapon mastery blessing given by the war deity helped him increase his efficiency by 100-folds. On top of it, the gifts he received from the blacksmithing deities Eitri and Brocker played a vital role in his skills and techniques greatly advancing in a short time. Nonetheless, although he was using all these cheat codes along with his doppelgangers, the fact also remained that Khan too worked himself to the bone while bearing the mental pressure of 16 different consciousnesses at the same time. The blacksmithing duel. Even if he lost, it could not take away this rich experience and knowledge he painstakingly earned in the past 18 months. Now all he had to do was continue his training and accumulate real experience in the future to come, and maybe one day, he would be able to surpass both Albestros and Throck in his lifetime. All the effort and risks they took till this point were indeed worth it. And the best part of it was that it was just the beginning. While Khan's pleased expression was noticeable to everyone as he thought about how all the risk and efforts were worth it after getting his armors and weapons made by Throck, the latter decided to speak up. "Do you think that was the end? Are you looking down on me?" asked the old dwarf with a wicked grin. "There's more?" asked Omega with his eyes wide open. The other subordinates also had a similar expression as they were all taken aback. Throck smirked and then revealed in a prideful manner. "Although I couldn't use the dragon's blood on all the other armors and weapons since it was limited, I used the ancient dwarven techniques to make them superior as well. They're no less powerful than the trident or the katana. Also, if they're all equipped at the same time, they will grant additional powers to the users," he revealed. "What kind of powers?" questioned Khan as he felt like there were bound to be even more surprises. "Although they're made from a dragon's body, I noticed that the body itself didn't have any particular elemental affinity to it," he said. Khan nodded, since he had already absorbed every bit of darkness element in the body and kept extracting the remaining residue while the dragon was kept inside the dimensional domain. The body itself had no element left to it when he handed it to Throck. "And due to that fact, I was able to make some improvements on them and add additional features," he said, and then activated a red orb-like artifact, and soon, all the armors and weapons emitted a faint yellow as the runes imprinted on them glowed under Throck's command. Khan and Blackwell had a baffled expressions again because they knew what these articulate and varying runes represented. "Yes, these runes you see, they will allow the armors and the weapons to absorb and gain additional elemental attributes based on the user's preferred and most compatible element with their bodies." Gasp! Dumbstruck, the group couldn't help but reveal shock collectively after this revelation. As for why they were so stunned, because it was indeed a big deal. This was something even Albestros couldn't do back in Aesir when he gifted all of them with gears made from the Invimarak's body. Back then, their gears only allowed them to directly summon and unsummon them while having a very good elemental affinity. They could even change the colors of their gear based on will. But one thing still remained, that the Invimarak monster itself didn't have any element attached to its body. So these gears were like a neutral elemental in nature, and even with the old man Albestros' impeccable work, there was a limited type of effects they could gain in a battle. Even Khan's old Dracos armor had magma and fire leaking out of it despite both not being his element. But since the magma drake was a being of that nature, Albestros couldn't help but make the armor in that fashion. But after Throck reforged those very armors with the guardian dragon's body, they basically had a clean slate and could imbue their particular elements in their respective gears. For normal people it didn't matter much, but for variant monsters like them, it meant a lot, because although they looked like humans and hybrids, their elements were different. Blackwell was a Titan with Earth element, but in the future, he'd get new elements if he found and absorbed the bloodlines of other Titans. Jugram was a higher and upgraded version of true demon species with Chaos element. On the surface, it resembled fire, but even the fire Jugram summoned was actually hellfire. So there weren't any suitable armors for him either. Cyril was an undead necromancer with darkness element affinity. Even now, he had no suitable gear that catered to his element perfectly or helped him increase the attack and efficiency of spells and skills. The same situation was the case for Ronan, who had venom and now a spirit element that thrived on the souls of the enemies. Armin still didn't have a perfect set that matched his wood elemental and life force healing skills. As for Oliver, other than the epic rank bow, he didn't even have a noteworthy archer set that could increase his lightning and wind elemental attacks perfectly. But because of these weapons Throck made for them, they would finally be able to get past this biggest setback that hindered their potential and growth in the future. Hence, all of them were caught off guard by Throck's statement. A newfound sense of respect rose in their minds towards Throck because till now, only Khan and Blackwell admired him because they were his disciples. But now, Omega and the remainder of the generals finally had a reason to admire the old blacksmith. All right, all of you touch and inject your armors and weapons with mana, world energy, and elements you're compatible with. The subordinates followed his commands and one by started infusing their elements, mana, and world energy. Jugram's berserker armor turned black and fiery red. Blackwell's tank armor turned dark gray as if it was made from earthly metals and minerals. Ronan's light assassin gear turned black and yellow. Armin's robes for healers that were mostly made from the dragon's hide with turned green because of the wood elemental affinity. Oliver, on the other end, had very few parts since archers needed more speed and flexibility just like the assassins, and soon, his armor turned into a combination of blue and golden parts. Cyril declined with an excuse that he'll do it later as he wanted to study his mage robes and scepter first. Khan also did the same because both of them had a darkness element and dark magic affinity. This was something they couldn't risk revealing in front of Throck. Omega didn't have armor made by Throck because he didn't need one. He was already very happy with Kojin, so there was no problem from his end. Finally, after the armors gained their particular element, the 5 of the generals could feel the weapons and armors resonating with their minds, as if they weren't external objects but part of their bodies. It was the same connection Khan felt whenever he used Lucifer or the Dracos armor. Throck smiled as he saw the gang admiring his craftsmanship that was indeed deserving of every single praise. He glanced at Khan and spoke in a joyous tone. "Brat, every single weapon and armor here is worthy and is of a legendary rank. So it's a given." Before he finished his sentence, Khan nodded in an understanding manner as he said, "Time to name them all." Khan gave a thoughtful expression as he looked at the armors and weapons kept in front of him. Soon, Throck revealed 2 more weapons that he specifically made for him. But this time, he didn't dwell too much on their details as he already knew of their quality. Dracos armor va Lucifer stayed the same since they were only reforged and upgraded. The 2 new weapons revealed by Throck were a legendary rank spear and a set of brawler fighting gear that had gauntlets, shoulder pads, and greaves. The black and golden spear was obviously given the name Gungnir. As for the brawler gear, there were some small nails coming out of the gauntlet that was made from the dragon horn, but these small nails were made from the dragon's claw. Khan named this whole set that he might use in the near future as Beowulf. After he was done with his own sets and weapons, he gave a serious expression towards the gears of the subordinates and started inspecting them since most of them were now infused with the general's respective auras and elements. Jugram's red giant's word that exuded scorching hellfire and raised the temperature of the room was named Ares. Ronan's 2 daggers, which were black and green with yellow patterns on them, were named as Erebus. Cyril's scepter, which resembled a particular famous god's scepter, was given the name of Anubis. For Blackwell, his gear consisted of a dark gray-colored shield and battle-axe. Khan named the shield as Aegis. As for the massive battle-axe that could cleave through a massive boulder in a single swing, was named as Heracles. Armin, who finally got a legendary rank healer class staff, was inwardly excited when Khan named his new weapon as Hermes. Finally, Oliver received a sense of fulfillment after Khan bestowed his bow with the name Neith. Soon after finishing the names for the weapons of the generals, Khan then moved next to their armors and robes that would assist them in a battle and save their lives. Jugram's armor, which consisted mostly of black parts due to horns, claws and hide of the dragon, and had dark red hellfire around it, was given the name of Balrog set. Ronin's new black and yellow lightweight armor set that greatly emphasized design, which allowed the user to make use of extreme agility and precision, was named as Shinigami set. Seryl's pitch black mage robes with golden outlines, chest plate and pauldrons all over it along with a hood, was given the name of Hades set. Blackwell's dark gray set, which had a very bulky and sturdy build, was now named as Atlas set. Armin's green and white robes with a hood revealed the aura of life force and nature just from the first glance, and now Khan named the whole lightweight armor as Nirvana set. As for Oliver, the one who was undefeatable while fighting in the sky, Khan named this armor set, which already revealed strong and sharp noises of a typhoon and gusts of winds, as Shu set. Now that everyone on the team finally had their special and custom-made armors and weapons, they all revealed a satisfied smile on their faces. As for the trident with Guardian Dragon's remnant, aka Atlan, Khan decided to keep it inside his space ring for the future, as he promised Rudra. To wrap things up, now there remained only one thing that had to be done, and that was the Bloodbind ritual. Unlike their time with Albestros, this time, Khan and Blackwell also participated, since Throck had already taught them how to perform this ritual that bound a weapon and armor to a particular individual and also connected their minds to it. Alright lads, now you all can rest assured that you'll be able to summon these armors and weapons back to you even if someone stole them. It exists as long as you all live, spoke the dwarven blacksmith master after they were done performing the ritual. Everyone instantly summoned their armors and hid them in their respective space rings at will, now that their gears had formed a sort of mental connection like that of between living beings. The old dwarf then looked at Khan and Blackwell as he spoke. If you ever decide to reforge them, make sure that you do it only when there are body parts available of higher ranked dragons like Superior or a Royal Dragon. You can also use other beings and monsters, but I'd recommend making a new armor set because it will be a downgrade for these sets. Dragon bloodline is incompatible with all the other bloodlines, so it's better to not ruin these perfect armors and weapons. Do you understand? Questioned Throck. Yes, master, replied the disciples in unison. Good. Now let me tell you what kind of additional upgrades I added to Pendragon formation. I perfected what that human blacksmith couldn't do because he wasn't a saint-rank person, said Oakenshield with a smug smile. Soon, he started elaborating his genius work and the new functions he added to the armor sets and weapons. A few moments later, "You're the best blacksmith of the Empire," shouted Blackwell vehemently. "No, you're the best blacksmith in the entire world," exclaimed Khan. The scenario in the room had completely changed in just a few moments after Throck revealed the final upgrade he made. All of the attendees present in the forge were kneeling on the ground while their hands raised up, bowing while circling Throck as if they were worshipping a god inside a temple. But instead of feeling overwhelmed by this reaction, Throck was reveling in it without hiding his smug smile as an aura of pure shamelessness was oozing out of him. "All right, don't try to flatter me," he said and gazed at Khan. "If you want to repay, you know what to do," he said with a firm tone. He had held the end of the deal from his side, and now it was time for Khan to show the results of his training so far. Khan in return gave a fearless and determined look, because the next day was very important to him as well, because tomorrow was the day of the blacksmithing duel. The next day, a grandiose scenario of celebration and festivities occurred throughout the entire Vulcan Empire, akin to their biggest cultural event. A few 100,000 spherical projection screens that displayed the holograms of a particular arena's live feed to the populace had occupied all the major streets and gathering spots in cities, towns, and villages. At this moment, a grand coliseum in the capital Arkensen that was situated in Dvalin, the city which was also the main headquarters of the Dwarven Council. And the entire site that was displayed at this moment was called Thamer Coliseum. In the annals of history, all the major blacksmithing duels in the history of the Vulcan Empire were held in this very arena to pay respect to Thamer, an ancient and renowned blacksmith who was the figurehead in leading the dwarven race to reform the empire after the Fireborns overthrew the old rulers and freed their species from slavery. And now, this place where the best of the best blacksmiths displayed their talent and decimated enemies with pure blacksmithing knowledge and skills alone. This was the battlefield of the craftsmen. In the middle of the rounded Colosseum that spanned 2 kilometers in perimeter, and had over 100,000 spectators seated over different platforms, and the arena was filled with people from different species and races. The dwarves and fireborns being the majority while humans being the least in numbers. In the middle were 2 sections made of black hard stone by the best stonemasons of the empire. Each of these sections resembled a working place of a renowned blacksmith that had furnaces, racks to place the equipment, various devices and machines that aided in the forging and crafting altogether. All in all, it was no different than 2 separate forges specifically made for the 2 participants. The lowest and closest levels in the sitting arrangement were filled with the nobles, military officials, influential business organization leaders, the top management of the 6 Fireborn clans, as well as some of the members of the Imperial clan. Additionally, a separate pavilion entirely made of marble for the judges and the top figures of the Dwarven Council, as well as the Church of Hetrax, was situated at the end of the round arena. The 3 judges for the duel were none other than the Trinity themselves: Master Ivaldi, Master Druvagar, and Master Philly. The top 3 Saint Blacksmiths of the Vulcan Empire were appointed as the judges who would inspect and give their opinions as true experts and decide the victor of this duel. Above their platforms were 10 seats. 5 of them were occupied by the 5 high elders of the Dwarven Council from the left side, while the rest 5 had the Pope, 2 cardinals, and 2 archbishops from the right side respectively. These 2 institutes were the official organizers of the blacksmithing duel between the human and the dwarf disciples of Throck Oakenshield and Bifur Torek. In the beginning, it was only going to be the Dwarven Council, but since the Church also declared their support for Oakenshield, they had to be brought in as organizers. With their help, the duel now reached a level where the whole empire knew about it and were looking forward to it. Because for the majority of the citizens, it wasn't just a duel between 2 people, but the matter of pride. To dwarves, blacksmithing and stonemasonry were their forte, something they were unrivaled in. The dwarf contending in this duel was representing centuries of history and pride. And for humans who were just liberated because of the imperial decree and finally had a fair chance to live their lives equal to the other races, the human challenger was acting as the culmination of their freed spirit. So in many ways, this wasn't just a normal duel between 2 individuals, but a symbolic battle between 2 races, as well as a matter of pride and heritage that played a vital role in the culture of the Vulcan Empire. And finally, above the topmost part of the pavilion was a room specifically made for the imperial family. And the 2 individuals occupying different luxurious chairs were none other than Hector and Vanessa, the first prince and the 3rd princess of the Vulcan Empire, respectively. Hector had an excited expression on his face. This whole arrangement with Throck, after being advised by his secret helpers who contacted him during the events with Rogies, the 2nd prince, had greatly benefited him till this point. Although Vanessa had a great start and overall momentum in the race for the position of the crown prince or princess. A few weeks ago, she pulled out from the race for some reason and no longer wished to stake her claim for the throne. As things stood, she no longer had any support from the nobles, the commanders, generals of the military, and everyone who previously sided with her till now. Thus, Hector was assured that he would now become the crown prince and the future emperor as well. Hector glanced without hiding his elated smile as he laughed inwardly at Vanessa because now, his decades of planning somehow resulted in Vanessa giving up. The 3rd princess, however, had a solemn expression, but there was no longer a light in her eyes, as if she was a defeated woman who had given up on her life while wondering if there was any meaning to her existence. After learning of her fate told by the emperor, Vanessa had simply broken down because there simply seemed no point to all of the hard work and training she did to become the empress. Her fate was not in her hands since birth from what have he, her father told her. At this same time, there was another pavilion exactly on the opposite side of the arena where a group of nobles and a few saints were seated. At the front of this group were 8 seats. These people were someone who were portrayed as the group who represented the empire's future, the hero's party. Axel snickered as he looked at Vanessa's lifeless expression as a wicked smile appeared on his face. While the whole empire was excited and expected a great match, two individuals were standing in the center of the arena. For someone who had been the center of attention for billions of people for years in the Rocco's empire, Khan wasn't slightly dazed or nervous as everyone's gaze was pointed at him. As a craftsman who had been mastering his skills for decades at this point, Halsey was as confident and full of battle intent as one could be. Finally, a middle-aged Fireborn announcer stood in the middle of the arena and explained the rules to the audience across the Colosseum and the people throughout the empire. After he was done, he loudly shouted and his stoic voice resounded in the whole Vulcan Empire at the same time. "Begin the blacksmithing duel." A red-skinned Fireborn with an elegant outfit that was a combination of white and purple stood in the middle of the arena as both the challengers faced each other with eyes filled with competitiveness. Soon, the Fireborn announcer spoke in front of an indigo-colored gem-like artifact that transmitted his voice to more than 100,000 spectators, as well as the organizers. "To our esteemed audience and the people looking through the projection screens throughout the Empire, I would like to take a moment to explain the rules of the duel," he said in a calm and gentle tone. In the past, not a single blacksmithing duel was broadcasted throughout the whole Empire, and only the people related to the craft and some big names knew about the rules. So the announcer took the liberty to explain them in simple words to the common populace. The duel will have 5 rounds in total. Each round will have a fixed time limit set by our judges. This time limit will be different for each round based on the type of object to be forged. At the same time, both the challengers will get the same set of materials for that particular round. Both of them will have to forge that equipment or a weapon, and it should have the rank already decided on. The designs will vary based on the ability of the blacksmith and what shape they want to give it, he declared to the audience. Since not everyone is familiar with the blacksmithing craft and the grade or rank of the weapons and armors, let me enlighten you all. He iterated with a benign smile. Following are the ranks based on quality and their overall performance. Each one is better than the former. Normal, bronze, silver, gold, rare, epic, legendary, ancient, and divine. The last 3 being the hardest to forge, and even in our empire, there is only one ancient rank weapon, explained the announcer. In reality, Axel had a divine weapon, but this wasn't information people were supposed to know about heroes no matter which empire it was. To many, this was also the first time they heard about it because not everyone in the world was a warrior or could use mana and had invoked a fighting class. Even the majority of the soldiers in any empire's army only had military training, while those who could use the mana were treated differently as long as they were at least an intermediate rank in their respective profession. Thus, this information was obscure and irrelevant to 95% of the population. In the end, the winner of that round will be decided on the quality of the finished weapon or armor. The one who wins 3 out of 5 rounds will win the duel, he announced. In the first round, both the challengers have to forge a silver rank shield, and the time limit is 2 hours. He revealed to the audience and came in between Khan and Halsey. He raised a white handkerchief in his right hand and instantly threw it on the floor as he loudly shouted, "Begin the blacksmithing duel." Rumblings noises filled the entire Colosseum as people screamed in excitement. Meanwhile, Khan and Halsey looked at each other, uncaring towards the ear-deafening cheers. "Give it your best. I don't want to win by default just because you're incompetent," said Halsey with a look of disdain. He trained for more than 3 decades at this point, and now he was forced to challenge a human who wasn't even worthy to be an apprentice in Throck's company, all because of the bet made by 2 saint blacksmiths. For Halsey, it was like a tiger forced to face a small chicken. Everyone knew who was the stronger among the 2, and there was no glory in winning such a fight. That's why he urged Khan to at least make some effort before losing miserably. Khan, who was now wearing a white cotton shirt with his forearms exposed and brown leather pants, had his arms folded. "What a coincidence," said Khan with a smile and continued in a hushed voice. "I was about to say the same to you." Shock. Halsey was surprised to hear these words from Khan. An ant was telling a giant to be careful of him. What a joke. But instead of responding, Halsey scoffed scornfully and headed towards his side of the arena, as he quickly started forging, while Khan walked towards his end. The metal provided for this round was abyssmithium, a metal that had high ductile properties and could also absorb the shock of higher momentum and power. This metal was very popular because if a skilled blacksmith made a shield out of it, it could be a life-saving piece of gear in an all-out war or in a dungeon raid for tanks and knights. Both sides quickly started their forges and took out the tools. The first procedure was melting the metal and casting a thick sheet that they would use to make the design outlines which would decide the final shape of the shield. While they started their procedures, the audience went into chattering mode like a default setting. "Who do you think will win?" "May," asked a white goat kin to a purple orc sitting beside him. "Isn't it obvious?" "The dwarf for certain. I heard rumors that this human named Khan hadn't even held a hammer in his life before the duel was agreed upon," he said in a carefree tone. "Yeah, I heard the same. May, I wish there was some sort of better system like those warrior battle arenas. I would have made some good Harlan." "May," said the goatkin with two red horns as he bleated. "As if the money would depend upon how many people bet on the other side." "In this case," spoke the orc and snickered, "everyone would have bet on the same guy." "Ha ha," he laughed. "Damn it. Ha ha, you're right. May." Similar scenarios occurred where people started discussing things and expressed their opinions about the duel. Soon, dozens of new remarks landed on Khan's ears. His expression turned ugly and full of rage while he was smelting the materials. The petty comments from spectators didn't bother him in the slightest, but rather a different matter. He looked at the metal ingots being melted in the furnace as he cursed inwardly. "These motherfuckers gave me low-quality materials." Khan sneered inwardly in contempt as he looked at over 100 abyssmithium cores that sized that of a grown man's fist. At this moment, he was barely controlling his anger and tried to maintain his calm, because this act of messing with the forging materials wasn't as easy as it seemed. If Khan chose to retaliate, there would be too many questions raised regarding the duel, but as an effect, he won't be able to pinpoint the main culprit either. Someone wanted him to lose even if everyone was under the impression that he'd lose regardless because he was a duck facing a crocodile inside a pond. And the only merit he had in this fight was that he could choose to fly away in order to flee, which would eventually declare his loss. But still, it was a better choice to probe the situation first than making a scene and blatantly point fingers at people when he didn't even know who was the real guilty party that orchestrated this ploy. Also, if he said the duel was rigged from the get-go, many people would use that against him, saying that he was just making an excuse to justify his incompetence as a blacksmith. The only proof he had was the ores he received, but if he said it was intentional, the responsibility could be easily shirked away by saying that it happened by mistake or some other bullshit excuse. Khan couldn't even use his subordinates to find out the truth because every single one of them was hiding inside his shadow at the moment just to be safe. Because the highest authorities of the church, including the Pope himself, were present among the audience along with over a dozen or so people who were above 5th stage saint rank. His situation now was different from when he participated in the Emperor's Chosen competition where all the eyes were focused on different participants and no one was looking for monster auras. Back in Rocco's, nobody cared who was among the audience and there were no people from the church who excelled in detecting anomalies like his subordinates among the crowd. Naturally, the Pope, cardinals, and archbishops would be able to detect the auras and nature of his subordinates if his gang was exposed and sat in the open. Thus, he had already prepared beforehand and everyone was doing their best to perfectly mask their aura in Khan's shadow. Nevertheless, Khan understood that making any sort of move at this point would turn futile given the circumstances. Hence, probing the situation first seemed like the smart thing to do. So regardless of the outcome, Khan decided to play along in this first round. Soon, Khan decided to carry on with the forging and first, he put all the ores in a big crucible and later put it in a big furnace to start heating the metal ores. He patiently waited till the ores started melting and all the slag started accumulating above the hot liquid with time. TCH, look at the galls of that human, acting as if he knows how to make a shield. Since when can humans even come close to standing in the same room as skilled dwarven blacksmiths in our empire? Said a dwarf on the 5th layer of the audience seats. Many who heard it nodded in agreement because they too shared the same opinion. To them, Khan was only putting on some airs to not look like he didn't know a single thing. He's just putting on a facade. Just accept your loss and spare us the most obvious result, shouted a gray tigerkin among the crowd. These words were loud and thousands of people could hear them, but how could a true blacksmith just get wavered from simple provocative attempts? So Khan only focused on the job at hand, his mind and body not responding to these petty slanders. Once the metal was liquefied properly, Khan used a 4x5 cast and poured the molten liquid. He then used a machine that used mana ores to start crystallizing the abyssmithium metal. A crucial step while dealing with this metal because the longer it took to cool down, the weaker it will become. In the following minutes, he started framing and marking the design of the shield and then cut apart the metallic sheet that was 5 centimeters in thickness, very big and heavy based on Earth standards. But in Vantria, it was very easy to lift by anyone who was a beginner-rank individual. After the shape was cut, he started hammering it down to create a bulge at the center which he would later use to expand into a hyperbole shape that was good to face enemies in a battle. Afterward, Khan used a grinding tool similar to ones on Earth and smoothened the edges which would give it a decent look. Later, he started hammering to perfect the remaining edges and reformed the entire shield matching that of a knight. Compared to tanks, their shields were medium-sized and could be used by anyone as long as they had the strength. Khan then started finishing as he refurbished the whole shield and added handles in the back to properly hold it while bearing the brunt of a spell or a physical attack. And finally, the part that would ensure the quality of the end product, the runes. He took out a glowing yellow chisel. This wasn't a normal chisel tool but artificing equipment that was the equivalent of rune brushes in the Vulcan Empire. But these runes won't be painted like how he practiced during his training when he was performing something akin to calligraphy. Rather, the blacksmith had to engrave the rune markings on the shield using the chisel while infusing a bit of their mana into each of their strikes. Like how an artisan would perform their work, Khan engraved the runes effortlessly. Khan went layer by layer without messing up and finally finished the last job as an artificer as he drew basic level runes but was very efficient. The end product was supposed to be a silver rank shield, so there was no need to expose his skills too early in the game. 2 hours passed and finally, both sides presented their finished works and the 3 judges walked towards their presentations. Khan didn't know how much time it would take on Earth to make these kinds of shields, but here, only 2 hours were more than enough. He and Helsi stood proudly as they placed their shields on a wide marble table in front of the judges. Their eyes filled with confidence as both the challengers did their best. And finally, it was the time to decide the victor of this round. Both Helsi and Khan placed their respective shields on the big white marble table in front of 3 Saint Blacksmith judges. The opponent's shield had green and beige patterns here and there while the center had a head and horns of a ram. The shield made by Khan on the other side had black and silver coloring with the shape of a demonic head in the center similar to a yokai. Although both the shields were only of silver rank, they emitted a faint glow because of the attributes added to them via the runes by their respective makers. Helsi's shield gave off a faint blue aura, while Khan's glimmered with a yellowish-green aura. The judges will check the quality of the finished shields by themselves now. We will hear about their expert opinions soon, commented the announcer of the duel. In the following moments, Master Ivaldi dressed in red attire, Druvagar in blue and Philly in yellow started with Helsi's shield first. Back in the day when Thrak and Khan visited the Dwarven Council where the High Elders tried to intervene in the matters of the 2 blacksmiths, these 3 Saint Blacksmiths also appeared that day. Master Ivaldi, the number 1 blacksmith of the Vulcan Empire, and Thrak, as well as Bifur's former mentor, sided with Khan's master during that skirmish. Master Druvagar, the number 2 blacksmith, took Torik's side. Khan had an impression of this dwarf as someone who greatly hated humans and opposed Thrak taking in a human disciple. Master Philly, on the other hand, had chosen to take a neutral. He wasn't associated or familiar with any of the parties involved, and he already declared his intentions to not pick a side back then. And now these 3 top blacksmiths were going to judge the quality of their shields and decide the winner of the first round. Master Ivaldi, the long white-haired bearded dwarf, took a punch and banged it against the shield made by Helsi. Tang! The loud noise resounded in the arena and the Empire through the screens. He nodded in approval after inferring the built. Master Druvagar used his world energy to lift the shield high in the air, and in the following moments, 3 orbs containing 3 different elements such as fire, wind, and lightning came to be. Their size was very small, but the power concealed in these orbs could be felt by everyone. Boom! Right in front of the audience, he bombarded the shield with all 3 orbs at the same time. Sizzle! Sizzle! Smoke from the point of impact subsided and he out down the shield back to its place. All 3 masters nodded in approval after seeing that the shield was unscathed and had no cracks over it. Master Philly finally took his turn and started studying the engraved runes, and using his own Saint Pressure, he tested the shield's capacity to absorb the damage and how the rune helped it successfully alleviate it based on the type of rune. The 3 masters did not give any type of statement or remarks, only giving each other an understanding nod. And without waiting for another minute, they moved towards Khan's shield. One by one, they repeated the same actions and started discussing among themselves using an artifact. While their solemn expressions on the screens throughout the Vulcan Empire piqued everyone's curiosity and attention, the 3 masters finally came to a collective conclusion. The announcer walked close to the masters and held the mic close to their mouths since it was the moment of truth. Both are equally durable and can easily withstand a lot of damage, spoke Master Ivaldi. Gasp! Millions of gasps were heard regardless of the location within the Empire. This reaction came because nobody expected Khan to be in the same league as Halsey. Just the fact that both shields were equally matched in durability meant that the challengers also were equal to each other in terms of crafting skills. The build, as well as the ability to maintain its shape and structure, despite the bombardment of 3 different elements, speaks for itself. In my eyes, both the shields made by the challengers are top-notch work among the silver rank shields, spoke Druvagar like a true professional. He gazed at Khan with an indignant expression that expressed his acknowledgement toward Khan's shield, even if he abhorred him because of the latter being a human. And finally, Master Vili stated his opinion. I have inspected the runes on both the shields, so I will make a thorough comparison, said the old dwarf in yellow attire. Soon, he started pointing out flaws in both shields without holding back. Like how the size handling is catered to only heavy and strong build people and not universal use for Halsey's shield. As for the one made by Khan, it was very handy despite the shape in that manner, but also prone to getting bludgeoned. Not too sturdy compared to Halsey's shield. Quality is equally matched in many aspects, but then it all comes to runes, said Ivaldi with a somber expression. The first shield by Challenger Halsey is made for sustaining great damage, but not only it can absorb it while facing attacks in a frontal clash, but also would expel it on the enemies after a specific interval. This shield is extremely good for an offensive approach in a battle, said Druvagar with a stern expression. Then at last, Philly decided to give his expert opinion on Khan's shield. This shield is lighter compared to the first one, and also, the maneuverability is more flexible and also can be used by anyone regardless of their position in a battle formation. The runes engraved on it will help increase defense by absorbing damage with time. This is a fine shield specially made for a battle of attrition. Even a tank can benefit from using it, spoke the number 3 Saint Blacksmith as he gave his honest analysis. Both shields are good, but in a battle, the one made by Challenger Khan is lacking only in total defensive capacity for this weapon after taking everything into account. While it can accumulate and improve its defense over time, it's not ideal to face a sudden and unprepared onslaught, said Ivaldi. In the end, although the quality is equally matched for both the shields, spoke Druvagar, it depends on the response time and the position of the user in a battle formation. So if we were to personally choose the most preferred one, I think we have a common consensus, said Philly, and all 3 Saint Blacksmiths declared the result. The winner of the first round is. They took a moment of pause and their loud voice reverberated throughout the entire Vulcan Empire at the same time. Challenger Halsey. A loud cheer echoed in the Thamer Coliseum as soon as the judges declared the winner of the first round. Billions of people varying from different races had victorious expressions on their faces, as if this was their own win. What caused this great reaction? It was obviously due to their lingering hatred towards the humans of the Empire. Halsey may be a dwarf, but the majority still abhorred humans, and thus, his victory represented their notions of being superior to this species. The humans of the Vulcan Empire, however, felt an invisible sense of pressure as the majority of the populace cheered and laughed. There were many scornful gazes towards humans among the audience, whether it was the Colosseum or any city in the Empire. Humans should know their place. This was the type of contemptuous look they received from everyone else, even though no one openly spoke those words because of the fear of going against the imperial decree in public. As for the winner of the round, Halsey raised both his hands, making a victorious pose as he strolled around the arena with an elated expression. The loud cheers and words full of praise became music to his ears as he reveled in his victory. Not just him but his new master, Bifurtoric, was loudly applauding his disciple, as so were the people from his company. The members of High Elders from the Dwarven Council, as well as the 6 Fireborn clans, also shared the same enthusiasm and did not hold back while uttering flowery words. Khan, the loser of the first round, had a solemn expression, as if he wasn't slightly surprised or bothered by his loss at all. However, Throck and other skilled Dwarven blacksmiths, including the 3 judges of the duel, had a somber expression on their faces at the same time. Although Halsey won, it was because of certain conditions the judges stated based on the usability of the shield he made. His shield won because it was preferable in a battle, as the judges concluded. But this did not null the fact that Khan was already on the same level as Halsey, and he was someone who only started training in blacksmithing craft 1.5 years ago. At best, he should have made a decent shield that lacked compared to one made by Halsey in many aspects. But the fact that the 3 judges couldn't find any major flaw despite his inexperience also symbolized that Khan possessed a tremendous talent as well. To normal people, a win was a win. But to the experts of the trade, they saw too many possibilities instead of just a win-loss situation. "That kid isn't simple. Even I'm amazed by his growth," said Master Druvagar as he conversed with the other Saint blacksmith judges. Druvagar hated humans, but when it came to blacksmithing, he had his own honor and respect for his craft. Thus, he did not shy away from admitting Khan's talent. "Indeed, and I didn't see any signs of cheating either. For someone under the age of 30 years and exceeding our expectations by this much, even though he barely trained for a year and a half, this human is indeed not someone who should be looked down upon," spoke Master Ivaldi. "To reach this level in such a short time, how great was his talent. Even though I'm not familiar with Throck Oakenshield, I must say he found a diamond in the rough," praised Master Philly without restraint. Hundreds of Dwarven blacksmiths also shared the same opinion as they discussed among themselves. They had their pride as members of the Dwarven race, so they were happy for Halsey. But they were also loyal to their craft, and would never shy away from giving credit where it was due. At this moment, Khan did not show any expression on his face, which caused Halsey to stop celebrating. To him, it felt like Khan was already aware of losing. The opposite challenger, however, was inwardly happy that despite the bad materials, he could make a good shield that was on par with Halsey's, who had more than 3 decades of experience. And all of it happened because of his doppelgangers, which greatly raised his experience. And in the past 1 month, all 15 of them were at work instead of just 5. So his shield being on the same level as one made by Halsey meant that all that hard effort during his tireless training wasn't in vain. And Khan was able to bridge the gap between himself and his opponent by a huge margin. But the result also raised some suspicions in his mind, mainly because of the reason the judges gave to declare Halsey as the victor. Obviously, the situations to use both shields were different. Halsey made a shield for tanks while Khan made for knights, so of course it lacked defense compared to the one made by the former. And knights don't directly face and defend against the enemies. They're the second line of defense who protect the middle part, such as healers and mages, and fight alongside the swordsman or other melee class during a battle. It was made for a war of attrition. Halsey's was made for quickly ending battle, while his shield would increase defense over time in a long war. But the judges still chose Halsey as the winner. And because of this, a complicated feeling arose in Khan's heart. Were the judges also part of this ploy? Wondered Khan. Still, he couldn't reach a conclusion because of 2 reasons. One, because although the decision didn't go in his favor, their reasoning was also sound. 2, Ivaldi supported Throck while Druvagar supported Toric. But Master Philly was neutral. And during the evaluation, none of them spoke ill of his shield either. The first round Khan fought didn't give him any desirable evidence or hints to find the real truth about who the real culprit was. Finally, after 1 hour break, the second round officially started, but soon, Khan's face turned constricted. Again, these guys are too unscrupulous, because for this round too, the materials were of trash quality. It felt like the culprits weren't even trying to hide it, since they're being too shameless. Looks like I too need to use the same method as well, spoke Khan as he firmed his resolution. From the results of the first round, Khan knew that he was already a capable blacksmith on his own. Since the playing field was already rigged, and Khan was no saint either who would simply take it down when someone was punching him in the face, so it was time for him to play this biggest card as well. At this moment, Khan decided to do what he was best at, and that was cheating. While the spectators who were vocally and vehemently expressed their support for Halsey didn't stop. Meanwhile, Khan, the loser of the first round, had a tranquil expression as a devious plan hatched in his mind on the spot after receiving another set of trash materials for the second round. Now that everything was evident about the intentions of the organizers, Khan also didn't mind discarding his ethical values as a blacksmith in this competition. Since they didn't plan to play fair and square, he had no reason to follow his moral code either. Khan then looked to the left, his gaze landing at Throck sitting in a pavilion among the other high-valued audience group. He gave a look at his master and nodded. Sigh. Throck let out a sigh and understood what Khan's gaze meant, and in return he raised 2 fingers. This was a code between him and his disciple. Before the blacksmithing duel started, there was a sort of agreement between them that Khan wouldn't go all out from the start. As for the factors of him receiving trash materials or some sort of disadvantage, Throck already predicted that something like this might happen. And once it did, he would allow Khan to use his real skills without holding back. At this moment, Khan understood the signal and quickly started forging. While everyone was under the impression that he would fail again, without anyone noticing, Khan finally decided to use his 3 gifts given by the blacksmithing deities aka Eitri and Brocker. He used Blacksmith's Intent and Prometheus' Forethought, 2 of the 3 gifts. The former was a passive ability that allowed him to figure out characteristics of the metal or material and decide the most optimal temperature to use the said material in order to refine and forge a weapon out of it. The latter was an active skill that allowed Khan to focus and predict the quality of the end product. It was more of a guide that would help him decide on the final outcome of weapon or armor by carefully showing Khan the possible outcome of his forging techniques. There was another gift called Mimir's Eyes that could help him appraise any material's quality, grade, and purity, a crucial part that would decide the rank of the product. But currently, he didn't need one as this was just a basic level forging. The weapon for this round was a halberd and the metal was turquoise jadeite. This metal was mostly used to make ice elemental weapons and armors. As for the rank of the weapon, the judges decided to go for gold rank. Khan had already mastered using the 3 gifts during his training, so this wasn't his first rodeo either. Without anyone knowing, the iris in his black eyes turned faint golden, but it was well hidden due to red and yellowish glistening light coming out of the furnace. Thus, not a single soul, including the saint blacksmiths, noticed this change in his eyes. One by one, Khan went through the process of melting, casting, sweltering, tempering, elongating, and finishing. These were the necessary steps in forging a halberd while creating 3 different pieces. He joined them all later by performing welding, and finally, he refurbished them and started with the rune encrypting process. As the pole, he used a bone of a monster that was sturdy, lightweight, and 2 meters long. Any trained halberd user would prefer it over some random wooden pole to support the blades of the halberd. 4 hours passed in a blink of an eye. And finally, the judges decided to assess the finished weapons in front of the eyes of the audience. Just like before, they inspected Halsey's halberd first, decided its quality, and tested its damage output by pitting it against a wooden block. Crack! The entire wooden block was slashed in 2 with a single swing, while traces of ice shards appeared on the area that was separated after receiving the attack. Afterwards, Khan's turn came and the judges did the similar test. This time, It was Druvagar who used Khan's weapon in combat by moving it in the air via his Saint Aura alone. Bang! A loud noise resounded in the Colosseum as not only the audience but even the judges had their eyes wide open. Because unlike Halsey, the halberd forged by Khan not only cut apart the wooden block but also froze it entirely to the point it crumbled in seconds. Thousands of splinters fell on the ground like broken glass shards after the swing was made. "What kind of rune did he use?" questioned Master Philly and quickly infused his Saint Aura in the halberd. A well-polished golden rune was perfectly inscribed over the flattened blade of the halberd that glowed golden. To normal onlookers, it appeared as a single rune, but to true experts like the Trinity, they found the real cause in just 10 seconds. Hee. Looks like they noticed. Let's see which side they pick now. At the present moment, all three judges quickly noticed that there were a total of 4 different runes interwoven perfectly on the blade without hindering each other in the slightest. And their collective power completely exceeded the expectations of the judges. The judges tried their best to hide their surprise and looked at Khan with eyes full of amazement. Because what this human blacksmith just achieved now was something only an experienced individual of their profession could do. The Trinity conversed between themselves telepathically and reached a common consensus. "The winner of this round is," spoke Master Philly, and his sentence was completed by Master Ivaldi as they declared the result in front of the whole Vulcan Empire. "Challenger Khan." Instantly, the audience went silent as they gasped in surprise. Whether it was the Colosseum or people watching from different corners of the empire. But before their shock and bewilderment subsided, the judges quickly chose to reveal the reason. The materials provided for this round should have allowed both challengers to create a gold rank weapon. But the one created by Challenger Khan is of, said Master Druvagar, and rose the halberd in the air using his aura as he revealed why they declared Khan as the winner. Rare rank halberd. Everyone watching the blacksmithing duel throughout the Vulcan Empire was too perplexed to even react to this new information quickly. First, it was Khan winning the second round, the one no one thought about happening. Secondly, his forged weapon being of higher rank than the expected one. These two surprises hit them in succession and billions of people were left flabbergasted on the spot. This progression was something not even the judges of the duel expected to see.
Impossible.
How can that be? The materials were clearly suited only for a gold rank weapon. He must have cheated? Shouted Torek, who sat on the right side of Khan. Even in the pavilion of the Imperial clan, Hector and Vanessa were also left speechless. Even though they had no grasp of the blacksmithing craft, they knew how hard it was to make quality weapons with limited grades of materials. While everyone was unable to accept this fact, Khan gave a command to his subordinates hidden in his shadow. Note down everyone's reaction and give me reports from now on. This round was to gather enough attention and see all of their reactions. He ordered. Yes, Master. All of them replied collectively. Humph. Do you think we are fools? He has no space ring or an artifact on him. How could he have cheated? And all of us were keenly watching both the challengers. If he cheated, then a majority of us would have noticed a long time ago. Rebuked Master Druvagar, clearly feeling offended after the decision of the judges was questioned. Tap, tap. The next second, Master Ivaldi walked forth, gazing around the quiet Colosseum as he revealed his wisdom to those who couldn't decipher how Khan's halberd turned out superior. The secret lies not in the materials but the runes. He spoke in a gentle tone. Challenger Halsey could make only 2 runic inscriptions on the limited space on the halberd while Challenger Khan made 4. He calmly revealed this information. Gasp! Even someone with 2 brain cells could piece information together after this revelation. They could easily guess why Khan won this round. But among the experts, including the dwarven blacksmiths, another wave of discussions rose instantly. At the same time, Torek also shut up and Halsey had his eyes wide open. He was a semi-saint blacksmith himself. He too could make 4 runes on the halberd. But the issue wasn't the number of runes but how Khan managed to balance their effects. Weapons and runes were different identities in the end. One used runes to add additional effects to a weapon such as an element, some type of attack buff, or a boost that helped the user to perform desirable moves and techniques. In terms of crafting, The difference between the quality of the weapon and grade of the runes differed greatly. Each rune was like an infinity stone. Not everyone could wield it. Thus, the more stones added to a weapon, aka the wielder in this case, the greater the burden on them will be. This pressure was enough to explode the user itself. A gold-grade material would not be able to sustain a rare rank rune according to this logic. One had to be either Hulk or Thanos to wield them all at once. But what Khan did was he used 4 of such infinity stones and gave them to a normal human. And somehow, he managed to achieve synergy without obliterating that user itself. This level of mastery only meant one thing to all the experts: that Khan was at least a semi-saint blacksmith. A very experienced one in using runes at that. At this moment, some of the top-level elven artificers of the Vulcan Empire who were seated in pavilions of VIP guests also gave an incredulous look at Khan, completely out of their wits. Because if he could achieve that level of skilled rune casting on a weapon of lower grade which resulted in rising 1 rank above in terms of quality, it meant only one thing: that Khan was already a semi-saint artificer. This human, where the hell did Oakenshield find this monster? Thought the head of the Elven Artificing Association of the Empire. Many people tried to question the quality of the weapon, still unable to accept the fact that Khan won. But as soon as the Trinity revealed their angered saint pressures, all of the displeased voices stopped, going against the decision of the top 3 saint blacksmiths. Even the Dwarven Council will have to choose their words carefully lest they end up offending these 3 mighty figures. Thus, the second round concluded, and after an hour break, the third round began. Soon, the sound of clangings against metal reverberated in the surroundings as the spectators could feel small vibrations from each of the hits made by the challengers when they hammered down the weapons being forged. This time, the expected weapon was a rare rank war scythe. The materials given to Khan this time were also trash quality again, but he showed no qualms or even a surprised expression, as if he didn't even care at this point. But inwardly he was laughing like a maniac. Good, good, good. You idiots are walking into my trap just like I expected, he thought. For hours later, both sides were finished with their weapons. Many people in the audience had indignant and anxious expressions just like that of Torek and his people. The judges didn't beat around the bush and followed the same order of inspecting and personally testing the weapons. Just from the glimmering aura alone, Khan's scythe seemed superior to the one made by Helsi. And during the testing, the scythe made by the latter exuded a sharp and deathly aura as it instantly slashed apart an iron pole like a hot knife through butter. And there wasn't a single bulge or scratch on the edge of the blade. This was enough to assess how well made this scythe was. Finally, the judges tested the scythe made by Khan, the one they had even more expectations from after Khan revealed his talent in artificing. But in the following moments, even the 3 judged had their jaws dropped on the ground as soon as they tested the scythe against the iron pole. Forget cutting through the pole. As soon as they made the strike and the scythe touched the target, it shattered into small pieces. The atmosphere of the whole empire turned silent. Whether it was Khan, the judges, the people present in Thamur Coliseum, or numerous places across the empire, all of them were rooted on the spot as soon as the scythe made by Khan shattered into small pieces. "No!" bellowed Khan in disbelief as he ran close to the testing area and tried to run his hands over the shattered pieces of the scythe's blade. Even Thrak was taken aback because he had no idea why things took this turn so suddenly. "Ha! Can't even make a sturdy weapon and wants to compete against a dwarven blacksmith." One of the spectators spoke loudly, mocking Khan openly. "What a joke! His weapon broke apart as soon as it touched the target, putting shame to all the blacksmiths of our empire," said a dwarven noble. "What a shame, and here I thought he had some skills," chimed in one of the leaders of the Fireborn clans. "He must have overexerted the blade with higher grade runes to raise the rank of the weapon just like before. But this time his attempt completely failed. Sometimes being over-ambitious can ruin you," said an elven artificer in one of the pavilions, his voice resounding in the whole Colosseum, thus reaching the ears of all the people of the empire through the live broadcast. This explanation from an expert was more logical and acceptable to everyone, and thus, all of them instantly believed it to be the cause. Soon, A barrage of mockery and words expressing disdain landed on Khan's ears. And he did not even hide his anger towards this blatant verbal bullying either. The three judges, on the other hand, were questioning themselves. What is this? Did he lose this round on purpose? Even if he messed up a few steps, the weapon shouldn't have shattered like a clay pot. Asked Philly to the other St. Blacksmiths. With his talent, his weapon should be on part with Halsey in this round as well. So why did he mess up? Questioned Druvagar. They were experts, even better than Throck and Torek in this field. So they naturally had their suspicions. This notion was shared by many others among the blacksmithing community because Khan went from 100 to 10 real quick. The winner of this round is Challenger Halsey, declares Master Ivaldi, the number 1 blacksmith of the Vulcan Empire. Halsey won the third by default. However, his face had no sense of joy or accomplishment. He felt like this victory wasn't achieved with his own skills. Among the audience, Torek was fully berating Khan and Throck, and so were his people for this unacceptable display. Even many humans across the Vulcan Empire were cursing Khan loudly, saying that he's a shame to the entire human race. Throck, on the other end, kept his mouth shut, because given Khan's skills, he couldn't mess anything up even if he was just woken up from sleep. Means there was a reason why he chose to lose this round. Something that he didn't know. But given how crafty his disciple was when it came to planning and putting machinations, he chose to stay silent and endure the trash talking from Torek and others. This surprised Halsey, who was stunned on his side of the arena. Because knowing his former master, the old dwarf would have already burst out in rage and cursed everyone's mothers already. But for some reason, he was quiet. Normal people couldn't guess anything at this moment, but experts like the judges and many renowned blacksmiths were aware that something was wrong in this situation. Meanwhile, while Khan showed a dejected face in front of the whole empire while bearing mocking words and berating from billions of people from their respective places, inwardly he was laughing. How many? He asked his subordinates. 12 people. Reported his subordinates. I see. Halsey and the judges also don't know anything. Means that they aren't part of it. All right then, we will find everything in the next round. He replied and carried on with their next forging round. In reality, he used mineral transmutation skill to ruin his own scythe. This was a skill he received from the mountain titan in Verlassen during their hunting spree. This skill had 2 main uses. One was to transmute different metals and minerals, while at the same time, it could also break them during that process in order to level up their composition. Khan first created the scythe to the best of his abilities. But while imprinting the runes using the chisel, he used mineral transmutation skill to break the strength of the body from the inside. This way, no one suspected that he was doing the job half-heartedly and couldn't see how the weapon got damaged either. And right when the judges used it during the testing, it shattered like a thin layer of hollow glass and instantly shattered into small pieces. All of this was part of the plan. For the 4th round, the weapon to be forged was a greatsword, and the crafting materials were mithril and adamantite. These 2 metals were extremely complementary to each other, and thus, the grade expected for the weapon was epic rank at best. But making an epic rank weapon wasn't something that could be done easily. Normally, it took days and an entire team of experienced people to make them. Since they were competing individually, Halsey and Khan had to do everything by themselves, and now that both of them were revealed to be at least semi-saint blacksmiths themselves, the judges gave them only 10 hours. This was a long period for many. Soon, many people across the empire went about their lives. Many people left and returned to the Colosseum based on their own convenience. Yet the judges, the organizers, and the people from the blacksmithing community didn't move from their seats. Even someone like Hector and Vanessa didn't stand up. Just 10 hours of wait was nothing to saints like them. And finally, the finished products were presented to the judges. This time, both weapons were similar based on the aura they leaked. But after checking Halsey's greatsword, they moved to Khan, and without even testing it, the judges declared in unison, "The winner is Challenger Khan." Everyone was dumbfounded as soon as the 3 Saint Blacksmiths directly declared Khan as the winner of the 4th round without even touching the greatsword he made. For the first time, even the Pope himself was surprised and greatly paid attention to the results, and so did his fellows from the Church of Hetrax. It was one thing if the Trinity inspected and compared the weapons first, but they declared the result as soon as they saw Khan's forged weapon up close. What nonsense is this? Many people roared among the audience, even if they had no direct connection to either of the challengers. Is this duel rigged? How can they decide the winner even without checking the weapon? Many suspicious queries arose throughout the empire. But without heeding these unsatisfied voices, the three judges released their saint auras and picked up the great sword, making it float in the air as the whole empire watched it. This is why we decided him to be the victor, spoke Druvagar, and all three of them mixed their mana in the great sword. Boom! A loud shockwave burst out of the great sword that had a gray hilt and 3 different colored runes on the flattened surface of the blade, while the edges from both sides glimmered white. The 3 runes that exuded green, yellow, and purple aura flickered on the blade from time to time, and the aura that burst out from the great sword instantly revealed a great pressure from the blade itself. Impossible! Shouted one of the dwarven blacksmiths. He couldn't have achieved that, unless, spoke the head of the Elven Artificing Association with a bewildered expression. What kind of monster is he? Don't tell me. He's already close to becoming a saint blacksmith, thought Torek with an ashen expression. The normal and uninformed audience couldn't make sense of this scene apart from the deduction of this weapon being very strong. Helsi, the brown-bearded dwarf opponent, was frozen on the spot as soon as he sensed the aura. This was a familiar aura to him, and he experienced it more than a dozen times when he trained under Throck Oakenshield. TCH. Why is he revealing it so early? Wondered Throck, who had both his arms folded and wasn't slightly surprised. Both weapons are of epic rank and should be equal. But the effects of the forged base weapon and the epic rank runes make too big of a difference, spoke Master Philly. The great sword made by Challenger Helsi is an epic rank one, worthy of praise and represents his capabilities as a semi-saint blacksmith. But what Challenger Khan made is what we call in their trade as, said Master Ivaldi and took a deep breath before revealing, a quasi-legendary weapon. Minutes passed, but many people were still having a hard time digesting the fact that someone like Khan, a newbie blacksmith who even had his weapon shattered to bits in the 3rd round, suddenly made a quasi-legendary rank weapon. No one needed an extra explanation about what that rank of a weapon meant, even if they were not informed about the blacksmithing craft. The weapon ranks were already explained to the common populace of the Empire before the duel began, and hence, there was no doubt about who made the superior weapon. By making a quasi-legendary weapon, Khan already proved his worth as someone capable to be in the top 20 blacksmiths of the Empire. If he ever made a legendary weapon or armor, he would be one of the bona fide top 10 blacksmiths of the Vulcan Empire. At this moment, Khan smiled inwardly because this was the first time when he went all out in this duel. Previously, he used only 2 out of 3 gifts given by the blacksmithing deities. The 3rd one, named Mimir's Eyes, had only 3 hours of activation period per day, so he had been avoiding using that ability. But for this round, Khan used all 3 gifts along with the mineral transmutation skill. All 4 of them were his biggest cheat codes when it came to the blacksmithing class, and finally, they shone the brightest in this round. For the 4th round, he alleviated the quality of the minerals and metals to create a superior and 100% pure version of them, thus adding his artificing skills and mastery over rune inscriptions. The result was finally here, a quasi-legendary greatsword. This weapon was on par with Lucifer back when Albestros forged it for the first time using the Magma Drake's claws. The weapon itself had the confirmed potential to reach a legendary rank weapon if reforged with higher quality materials in the future. This was the best Khan could do as things stood. Don't tell me, you're all ready, spoke Helsi in a broken voice. Yes. Khan nodded in affirmation and walked closer to Helsi. He bent down a bit and spoke on his left ear in a hushed voice, no longer trying to hide the fact at this point. I'm already a saint blacksmith, he replied nonchalantly. Shock! Gasp! As if his soul left his body, Helsi was rooted on the spot when Khan chose to reveal the truth. As for his rank, because Khan was already a first-stage saint, He was already qualified to become a saint blacksmith. Just 1 week before the duel, he reached semi-saint rank in both blacksmithing and artificing, meeting the two main conditions of a breakthrough as a saint blacksmith. But he still needed much more accumulation of years in experience. That was why he couldn't make a legendary weapon. People like Throck, Albestros, and the Trinity were no joke. Unlike the warrior class, their ranks rose differently, and the only restriction was their levels and comprehension. Khan could be titled as a beginner saint blacksmith and had much to learn and improve upon in the future. However, he had already passed the qualifications to surpass Halsey in every way. Now, the score was 2-2 for both challengers, and the one to win the final round will be the victor of this duel. As for the last round, like no exceptions, he still received the trash quality materials. Even more so than before, because the duel had reached the main deciding round. And as soon as the round officially started, Khan let out a wide grin and spoke softly. "It's time," he said, and then looked around the group of people who he deduced to be the main culprits. "To give a grand performance,